Montana Ranch, summer 1942. Henry Hayes sat on the porch of his ranch, watching his grandson Johnny tend to the horses in the corral. The boy moved with the awkward determination of 15 all-gangly limbs and borrowed confidence. 3 days ago, Johnny had been expelled from school for fighting. The principal said he'd attacked another boy without provocation. Johnny's father wanted to tan his hide. Henry had intervened. The old man's weathered hands rested on the arms of his chair, spotted with age but still strong. 70 years had taught him that some stories needed telling, especially when a boy stood at the crossroads between boyhood and whatever came after. Johnny finished with the horses and climbed the porch steps, collapsing into the chair beside his grandfather. The silence stretched between them, comfortable and waiting. "Your daddy tell you why I stopped him from punishing you?" Henry asked. The boy shook his head. "Because I asked him what you were fighting about." Henry turned to look at his grandson. "You tell me true now. That boy say something about your sister." Johnny's jaw tightened, so much like his father, so much like Henry himself at that age. "Said things he had no right saying. And you made him stop." "Yes, sir." Henry nodded slowly. "Let me tell you a story, son, about the year I turned 15. About the winter I learned what it means to protect family and what it costs." The old man's eyes went distant, seeing not the summer meadow before them, but another time, another season, when the world was sharp with cold and desperate with hunger. It was January 1887. I rode into Montana Territory with my mother and 8 brothers and sisters. We had 11 cents between us and a letter from a stranger who'd promised food and shelter. My mother had just answered an advertisement from a man the whole town thought had murdered his wife. Johnny's eyes widened. Henry smiled faintly. "You want to know what happened? Then settle in. This is going to take a while." The afternoon sun stretched their shadows long across the porch boards as Henry Hayes began to speak, and the decades fell away like snow from a branch. Copper Springs, Montana Territory. January 1887. Eleanor Hayes' fingers had gone blue. She could barely feel them as she lifted her youngest daughter from the stagecoach. Rose's small body burning with fever despite the brutal cold. 10 days of travel through ice and wind. 10 days of watching the child grow weaker, while Eleanor could do nothing but pray and ration what little food remained. 11 cents. That was all that stood between her family and starvation. 11 cents and a letter from Samuel Brennan, a man she'd never met, promising a home on a ranch in Montana. "Mama," the word came from her eldest Henry, his voice cracking between boy and man. "Mama, is this it?" Eleanor forced her eyes to focus. The sign above the station read Copper Springs, half buried under snow. This was it. The end of the line. The last hope she had left. "Everyone off." Her voice came out cracked, barely human. "Stay together. Hold hands." James complained that he couldn't feel his hands. 9 years old and already too thin, his coat 3 sizes too small. Eleanor told him to hold wrists then. Move. She counted them as they stumbled off the coach. Henry first 15 and trying so hard to be the man his father had been. Then Grace 12, clutching Robert's handkerchief like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to earth. James behind her, then the twins, William and Emma, both 7 identical, down to their chattering teeth. Charlotte came next, 6 years old and silent as a ghost since her father died. Then Thomas 5, who hadn't stopped asking when Pop was coming back. And Alice 4, holding Thomas's hand with a determination that would have made Eleanor smile if she'd had the strength. Rose made 9. Rose barely breathing at all. A woman stood near the general store, middle-aged, wrapped in a fine wool coat that probably cost more than everything Eleanor had ever owned. Tears streamed down the woman's weathered face. "Ma'am," the woman's voice shook. "Ma'am, are you the one who answered Mr. Brennan's advertisement?" Eleanor's throat tightened. "I am." The woman's hand flew to her mouth. Oh, Lord, have mercy." "Why?" Eleanor stepped forward, heart hammering. "What's wrong? Where is he?" "He's coming." The woman's voice broke. "He's coming. But ma'am, you need to know." "That's enough, Esther." The voice came from behind Eleanor. She turned. He was tall, taller than Robert had been, with broad shoulders and dark hair silvered at the temples. A scar traced his jaw, thin and white, but it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Gray-blue like winter sky and haunted. Deeply, terribly haunted. "Mrs. Hayes." He removed his hat. "Mr. Brennan." Samuel. Most folks call me Sam. You brought all 9. It wasn't quite a question. Was I supposed to leave some behind? Something flickered in his eyes, pain maybe, or guilt. No, ma'am, the advertisement didn't mention. Would it have mattered? He was quiet for a long moment. Then no, it wouldn't have. Mama. Grace's voice was thin with fear. Mama, everyone's staring at us. Eleanor looked around. The woman named Esther wasn't the only one watching. A dozen faces had gathered on the boardwalk, peering through frost-covered windows clustering in doorways. None of them looked welcoming. One man spat in the snow. Another shook his head slowly like he was watching a funeral procession. Why are they looking at us like that? Henry's hand moved to his belt where Robert's old hunting knife hung hidden under his coat. What did we do? Nothing. Samuel's voice was flat. They're looking at me. Why? Because some of them think I killed my wife. The words hit like a physical blow. Eleanor's arms tightened around Rose. Every instinct screamed at her to run to grab her children and disappear into the snow and never look back. But run where she had 11 cents, 9 children, a baby with fever. There was nowhere to go. Did you? She heard herself ask. Samuel met her eyes. No flinching, no looking away. No, ma'am, I did not. Then why do they think? Mama, James's voice cut through high and desperate. Mama, Charlotte fell down. Eleanor whirled. Her 6-year-old daughter was crumpled in the snow, her small body shaking with silent sobs. Thomas stood over her, helpless, his own legs trembling. She's too cold. Henry was already moving, scooping Charlotte into his arms. Ma, she's ice cold. The wagon's this way. Samuel's voice shifted urgent now. I've got blankets, food. We need to get them warm. Eleanor hesitated. 1 heartbeat, 2. Her daughter was freezing. Her baby was burning with fever. Her other children were starving and exhausted and terrified. She had no choice. She'd never had a choice. Lead the way. The wagon was better than anything Eleanor had expected. Sturdy, well-built 2 horses that looked healthier than her children, their coats gleaming, their bodies well-fed. She noticed. Of course she noticed. These aren't poor farmers' horses, she said quietly, lifting Charlotte into the wagon bed where Henry had already spread blankets. Samuel's hands tightened on the reins. No, ma'am, they aren't. Your letter said simple life, honest work, small farm needing a woman's touch. I know what my letter said. Then you lied. Silence. Behind them, the older children were helping the younger ones into the wagon. William was crying. Emma was trying to comfort him. James was arguing with Thomas about who got to sit where. Alice had climbed into Grace's lap and refused to move. Normal sounds, children's sounds. The sounds of her family surviving 1 more minute, 1 more hour, 1 more day. Ma, Henry's voice was low, meant only for her. You want me to? Get in the wagon, Henry. But Ma, her eldest son's jaw tightened so like his father when Robert was angry, but he obeyed. Eleanor turned back to Samuel. You got something to say. Say it now. I traveled 14 days with 9 children to get here. I don't have patience for games. Samuel exhaled slowly. The ranch is bigger than I let on. How much bigger? 1,200 acres. Eleanor's heart stopped. And the house isn't small either. 12 rooms. Built it myself mostly. Mr. Brennan, I should have told you the truth from the start. His voice was rough, cracked like old leather. I know that. But the last woman who knew what she was walking into, he stopped, started again. She didn't survive it. Your wife, Rebecca. The name came out like a wound. She died 4 years ago in that house. Some folks think I'm the one who killed her, and you're telling me this now, after I brought 9 children across the territory. I'm telling you because you deserve to know. Because if you want to turn around and get back on that stagecoach, I'll give you money for the fare. All of you. Back to what? Eleanor's voice rose sharp with desperation and rage. I got nothing back there, nothing anywhere. I got 9 children, 11 cents, and a baby who might not make it through the night if I don't get her somewhere warm. Her voice broke. I got nothing, Mr. Brennan. Don't you understand? I got nothing but them. Samuel was quiet. Then slowly he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. He opened it to reveal bread, cheese, dried meat. For the children, he said. It isn't much, but it'll hold them till we get home. Home, the word tasted strange on Eleanor's tongue. Is that what this is? It could be, if you want it to be. Eleanor looked at the food in his hands, looked at her children in the wagon behind her. Hungry, cold, scared, but alive. All 9 of them still alive. She thought about Robert, who died in a mine collapse trying to earn enough to keep them fed. Thought about the farm they'd lost, the debts they couldn't pay the creditors, who'd taken everything but the clothes on their backs. She thought about the letter she'd written 3 months ago, desperate and ashamed, answering a stranger's advertisement because she had no other choice. She took the food. "My children eat first," she said, "then we talk." The ride to the ranch took nearly 2 hours. Eleanor sat in the wagon bed with her children, distributing the food in careful portions. A bite of bread for William, a piece of cheese for Emma, dried meat for the older ones who could chew it. She saved nothing for herself. "Ma, you got to eat too." Henry pressed a piece of bread into her hand. "I'm fine. You haven't eaten since yesterday." "I said I'm fine, Henry." "Mama." Rose's voice was barely a whisper. "Mama, I'm cold." Eleanor pulled the blankets tighter around her youngest, feeling the heat radiating from the child's small body. Too hot, too dry. The fever was getting worse. "I know, baby. We're almost there." "Where's there? Our new home? Is Papa there?" Eleanor's throat closed. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Papa's in heaven, Rosie." Grace's voice was gentle, old beyond her 12 years. "Remember, he's watching over us from heaven." "But I want him here." "I know, I want him here too." Silence fell over the wagon, heavy as the snow that had started falling again. Eleanor looked at her children, really looked at them for the first time in weeks. Henry with his father's jaw and his father's stubborn pride. Grace with her quiet strength and her endless journals. James, who never stopped moving, never stopped asking questions. The twins, identical and inseparable, they're finishing each other's sentences. Charlotte, who'd stopped talking almost entirely since Robert died. Thomas, who still set a place for Papa at every meal. Alice, who'd taken to carrying her father's old pocket watch everywhere she went. And Rose, sweet Rose, who'd never know her father at all. 9 children, her 9 reasons to keep breathing. "Ma." James's face appeared over the wagon's edge. "Ma, look." Eleanor turned and her stomach dropped. It wasn't a ranch. It wasn't even a farm. It was an empire. A massive house dominated the valley below. 2 stories of timber and stone windows glinting gold in the dying light. A porch wrapped around 3 sides. Smoke curled from 2 chimneys. Beyond the house, buildings spread like a small town. A barn that could hold 50 horses. Workers' quarters. Storage sheds. A separate cottage. And beyond that land, endless land stretching to the mountains. "Holy Moses," James breathed. "Language," Eleanor said automatically, but her voice was faint. "That isn't a farm." Henry had climbed up beside James, his face pale. "Ma, that isn't a farm." "I know. He lied to us." "I know." "What else did he lie about?" Eleanor didn't have an answer. The wagon rolled down toward the valley, toward the beautiful house with its smoking chimneys and its buried secrets. Eleanor held Rose closer and prayed. The woman who emerged onto the porch was nothing like Eleanor expected. She was perhaps 60, silver-haired, dressed in practical wool rather than fine silk. Her face was lined but kind, her eyes sharp with intelligence. "Samuel," her voice carried across the yard, "you're late. I was worried sick." "The stage was delayed, snow on the pass." Samuel jumped down from the wagon. "Aunt Abigail, this is Mrs. Eleanor Hayes." Abigail's eyes swept over Eleanor, taking in her threadbare coat, her frost-bitten cheeks, her trembling arms wrapped around a feverish child. Then Abigail looked at the wagon, at the faces peering over the sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 faces. All of them thin, all of them scared. 9, Abigail said softly. "You brought 9 children." "Yes, ma'am." Eleanor lifted her chin. "Where I go, they go." "Of course they do." Something flickered in Abigail's face. Not disapproval, not judgment. Something else. Something Eleanor couldn't read. "The little one." Abigail moved closer. "She's sick. Fever. 10 days now. Has she been eating? Won't keep nothing down." Abigail reached out, pressed her hand to Rose's forehead. Her expression shifted. Bring her inside, now, all of you inside. May's got soup on the stove and bed's warming. Ma'am, Eleanor started, we'll talk later. Right now, that baby needs tending. Eleanor didn't argue. She couldn't argue. She let Abigail guide her toward the house, let Samuel help the other children down from the wagon, let herself be swept into the warmth of a home she didn't understand. The kitchen was larger than the entire farmhouse she'd lost. A woman stood at the stove, middle-aged Asian features, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She turned as they entered, and her eyes widened at the parade of children filing through the door. How many? She asked Abigail. 9. Lord have mercy. But she was already moving, pulling out bowls, ladling soup, her hands never stopping. Sit, sit all of you. Eat first, talk later. The children didn't need to be told twice. Eleanor watched them descend on the food like wolves. No manners, no restraint, just desperate hunger finally being fed. Henry tried to eat slowly, tried to set an example, but even he couldn't help shoveling the soup into his mouth. When did they last eat properly? Abigail asked quietly. 3 days ago, maybe 4. Eleanor's voice was hollow. Stage got stuck in a drift, ran out of food. And you... Eleanor didn't answer. Abigail's hand closed around her arm, gentle but firm. May, take the baby. Get her fever down. No, Eleanor's grip tightened on Rose. I don't... Mrs. Hayes, Abigail's voice was kind but brooking no argument. May raised 3 children of her own before she came here. She knows what she's doing, and you're about to collapse. I'm fine. You're not. You're exhausted and starving and trying to hold yourself together for those children. I know because I've been exactly where you're standing. Abigail's eyes met hers, deep brown, filled with something that looked almost like recognition. Let us help. That's all we're asking. Let us help. Eleanor's arms loosened. May took Rose, gently murmuring soft words Eleanor couldn't hear. The baby whimpered but didn't cry. Good. Abigail guided Eleanor to a chair. Now eat, then we talk. I need to know. I know what you need and you'll get answers. But first you eat. You're no good to those children dead. A bowl appeared in front of Eleanor. Steam rose from it, carrying the smell of beef and vegetables and warmth. She picked up the spoon. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold it. She ate anyway. The children were fed and bathed and tucked into real beds for the first time in months. Eleanor stood in the doorway of their room, 3 beds pushed together, all 9 children piled in like puppies, and felt something crack open in her chest. They were warm. They were fed. They were safe. For tonight at least they were safe. Mrs. Hayes, she turned. Samuel stood in the hallway, his hat in his hands, his haunted eyes darker in the lamplight. We need to talk. Yes, Eleanor pulled the door almost closed, leaving a crack so she could hear if the children woke. We do. They walked downstairs in silence. The parlor was warm, a fire crackling in a hearth large enough to stand in. Abigail was already there, seated in a high-backed chair, her face grave. Samuel gestured to a chair. Eleanor sat. Ask your questions, he said. Your wife, how did she really die? Samuel flinched, but he didn't look away. Childbirth. The doctor was drunk. The midwife couldn't get through the snow in time. By the time help came, his voice cracked. It was too late for both of them. Both. The baby. A boy. Samuel's hands clenched at his sides. They're buried together behind the house. Eleanor thought of her own births. 9 times she'd walked through that valley. 9 times she'd emerged with a living child. Rebecca Brennan hadn't been so lucky. I'm sorry, Eleanor said, truly. Thank you, but that doesn't explain why people think you killed her. Silence. Abigail shifted in her chair. My father, Samuel said finally. My father wasn't a good man, Mrs. Hayes. He built this ranch on other people's suffering. When he died, I inherited his land and his reputation. What kind of suffering? Forced sales, intimidation, some folks say worse. Samuel's voice was flat, emotionless, but Eleanor could see the cost of that control in the white of his knuckles, the tension in his shoulders. Rebecca found out. She was going through his papers trying to settle the estate, and she found things. What thing? Proof of what he did, of who helped him do it. Eleanor's blood ran cold. She was going to expose it, go to the authorities, burn this whole legacy to the ground. Samuel's laugh was bitter, broken. And then she died. Convenient, isn't it? You think someone... I don't know what I think. The doctor said it was complications, natural causes. But that doctor left town a week after the funeral and nobody's seen him since. And you have been living here for 4 years with everyone thinking you're a murderer. Where else would I go? Samuel spread his hands. This is my land, my curse. I can't run from what my father did. I can only try to make it right. How? By finding the truth, by proving what really happened to Rebecca, by returning what was stolen to the people it was stolen from. And that's why you placed the advertisement. Yes, you need help. I need someone I can trust, someone from outside, someone who doesn't have ties to this territory or the men who run it. Eleanor stared at him. You brought me here to solve your wife's murder. I brought you here because I'm desperate. Samuel's voice cracked. Because I've been living in this house for 4 years, surrounded by people who might be killers. Because I can't sleep without seeing Rebecca's face. Because I read your letter. A widow with 9 children willing to travel across the territory for a chance at survival. And you thought what? I thought maybe you were strong enough to survive this. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside. Eleanor thought about her children upstairs, warm and fed for the first time in weeks. Thought about the journey that had brought them here, the hunger, the cold, the desperation. She thought about Robert, who died trying to provide for them. About all the promises she'd made at his grave, about the future she'd sworn to give their children. Mr. Brennan, Samuel, he met her eyes. I came here for my children, to give them food and shelter and a chance at a life. That's all I care about. That's all I've ever cared about. I understand. But Eleanor stood, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. If someone in this house killed your wife, if someone's still out there, still dangerous, then my children are in danger too. Samuel's eyes widened slightly. So here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow you tell me everything. Every secret, every lie, every shadow in this godforsaken place. And then we figure out the truth together. You do that, I'd do anything to keep my children safe. Anything. For a long moment, Samuel just looked at her. Then slowly he nodded. Tomorrow, he said. Everything. Everything. Eleanor turned toward the stairs, toward her sleeping children, toward a future she couldn't predict, and a past she couldn't escape. Behind her, she heard Abigail's voice, low and urgent. She's strong, this one. I know. Samuel's response was barely a whisper. That's what terrifies me. Eleanor kept walking. She didn't look back, but she heard every word. That night, Eleanor dreamed of Robert. He was standing in a field of snow, smiling that crooked smile she'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. He reached for her, but when she tried to take his hand, he dissolved like smoke. Be careful, Maggie, his voice echoed. Be careful who you trust. She woke with tears on her cheeks and her daughter's name on her lips. Rose. She was on her feet before she was fully awake, stumbling down the hall to where May had put the baby. The door was open. Rose's bed was empty. No, the word came out as a moan. No, no, no. Mrs. Hayes. Eleanor whirled. Abigail stood in the hallway, Rose in her arms. The baby was awake, her cheeks pink, her eyes clear. Her fever broke an hour ago. Abigail smiled gently. She's going to be fine. Eleanor's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the hallway floor, sobbing, while Abigail lowered herself down beside her and placed Rose in her arms. She's going to be fine, Abigail repeated. All of them are going to be fine. You don't know that. No, Abigail's voice was soft. I don't, but I believe it. And sometimes belief is all we have. Eleanor held her daughter, felt the steady beat of Rose's heart against her chest, breathed in the smell of soap and warmth and life. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. Abigail's hand covered hers. Welcome home, Mrs. Hayes. And despite everything, despite the secrets and the wheeze and the shadows waiting in the dark, Eleanor felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Morning came with the smell of pancakes. James spotted her first. Mom, Miss May made pancakes, real pancakes with real butter. I can see that. Eleanor's voice came out thick. Did you say thank you? Yes, ma'am, 3 times. May flipped another pancake with practiced ease. Boy's got manners when he wants to use them. Eleanor moved into the kitchen, her eyes scanning automatically. Henry at the table, eating slower than the others, watching. Grace with Rose on her lap, feeding her small bites of soft bread. The twins arguing over the last piece of bacon. Charlotte silent as always, but eating. Actually eating. Thomas chattering at May about the horses he'd seen through the window. Alice had somehow gotten syrup in her hair. 9 children, all present and all breathing, all fed. Mrs. Hayes, Abigail's voice came from behind her. When you're ready, Samuel's waiting in the study. Eleanor's stomach tightened. Now, he's been up since before dawn going through his father's papers. Abigail paused. He meant what he said last night. Everything. Eleanor looked at her children one more time. Henry caught her eye, nodded once. 15 years old and already reading her mind. I'll watch them, Ma. I know you will. She followed Abigail down a long hallway. The study was smaller than she'd expected. Warm, cluttered with books and papers, a fire burning low in the grate. Samuel stood by the window, his back to her shoulders, rigid. Close the door. Eleanor did. What I'm about to show you. Samuel turned. His face was gray, eyes rimmed with red. He hadn't slept. It doesn't leave this room. Not until we figure out what to do with it. Understood. He moved to the desk and lifted a leather folder thick with yellowed papers. Rebecca found this hidden in the barn 3 weeks before she died. False bottom in a feed bin. Been there for years. His hands shook as he opened it. My father's records. His real records. Eleanor stepped closer. The first page was a list of names, 12 of them with dates beside each one. Some of the dates had been crossed out and replaced with a single word. Resolved. What does resolved mean? It means they're dead. Samuel's voice was hollow, or gone, driven off their land by any means necessary. Eleanor's blood chilled. Your father killed these people. Not with his own hands. He hired men to do it. Burned crops, poisoned wells, slaughtered livestock. Samuel turned to the next page. And when that didn't work, he paid someone to finish the job. The page was a ledger. Payments made to someone identified only as JW, $500 here, $300 there. Each payment corresponded to a name from the first list. JW, Eleanor said. You know who that is? Not yet, but I'm going to find out. And Rebecca, she was going to take this to the authorities. She was going to take it to the federal marshal in Helena. She'd already written the letter. Samuel's jaw tightened. I found it in her things after, never sent. Why not? Because she died 3 days before she planned to leave. The fire crackled. Wind rattled the windows. Eleanor's mind was racing. The doctor who delivered the baby, the drunk one, what was his name? Webb, Marcus Webb. And he left town right after. Week later, packed up in the middle of the night, gone before sunrise. Someone paid him. That's what I think, but who my father was already dead. Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out another paper. The ink was darker, newer. This is what I found last night, tucked into the back of the folder like someone added it later. Eleanor took the paper. Her hands went cold. It was a payment receipt. $500 to JW, dated 3 weeks before Rebecca's death. But the signature at the bottom wasn't Samuel's father. It was someone named Judge Cornelius Sterling. Who is that Judge Cornelius Sterling? Samuel's voice was barely controlled. He controls the territorial courts. Half the politicians in Montana owe him favors. And apparently he was my father's partner in all of this. A judge. A murderer hiding behind a bench. Eleanor stared at the signature. Neat, precise, confident. The handwriting of a man who'd never been held accountable for anything. He's still alive. Lives in Copper Springs. Big house on the hill, overlooks the whole town. Samuel laughed bitterly. I see him every Sunday at church. He shakes my hand, asks about the ranch, tells me how sorry he was about Rebecca. And you've never... I didn't have proof, not until now. Samuel took the paper back, his fingers trembling. But this changes everything. This connects him directly to the killings. To Rebecca. He'll know you have it. He might already know. Someone's been watching the ranch. I've seen riders on the ridge, keeping their distance, but always there. For how long? Weeks, maybe longer. Samuel met her eyes. That's why I placed the advertisement. I needed someone here, someone who could help me figure this out before Sterling makes his move. What kind of move? I don't know. But a man who's killed to protect his secrets won't stop now. The door burst open. Eleanor spun, her heart slamming against her ribs. Henry stood in the doorway, breathing hard. "Ma, there's men outside, 3 of them. They're asking for Mr. Brennan." Samuel was already moving. "Where?" "Front porch, big one's got a badge." Eleanor followed Samuel through the house, her mind racing. Badge meant law. Law in this territory meant Sterling. She reached the porch just as Samuel stepped outside. 3 men waited in the yard. 2 of them were rough-looking, the kind of men who enjoyed violence. The third was different. Silver-haired, expensive coat, soft hands that had never seen real work. "Mr. Brennan," the silver-haired man smiled. "I hope we're not interrupting." "Judge Sterling." Samuel's voice was carefully neutral. "This is unexpected." Eleanor's stomach dropped. This was him, the man whose signature was on that payment, the man who might have killed Rebecca Brennan, and he was standing 20 feet from her children. "I heard you had a visitor." Sterling's eyes slid to Eleanor, cool and assessing. "Several visitors, in fact. Mrs. Hayes and her children. They arrived yesterday." "Yes, they did." "Another bride." Sterling's smile didn't reach his eyes. My. You do go through them quickly, don't you?" Montana Ranch, summer 1942. Old Henry paused in his telling, watching the way his grandson leaned forward in the chair, caught in the web of the past. The afternoon sun had shifted, casting longer shadows across the porch. "So Grandma went home with a man everyone thought was a murderer." Johnny's voice carried equal parts horror and fascination. "Your grandmother went home with a man who needed help, and we needed shelter." Henry's weathered hands tightened on the chair arms. "But scared, son, I was terrified. We all were." "Then why didn't you run?" The old man was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. "Because sometimes courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when your guts are churning and your hands are shaking. Your grandmother taught me that. Judge Sterling taught me why it mattered." He shifted in his chair, settling deeper into the memory. "Now where was I? Ah, yes." Sterling had just arrived at the ranch with his men. Copper Springs Ranch, January 1887. "Is there something I can help you with, Judge?" Samuel's voice remained level, but Eleanor could see his hand drift closer to his belt. Sterling stepped forward, his expensive boots crunching in the snow. "Just a friendly visit. Wanted to make sure you were settling in all right." His gaze lingered on Eleanor. "And to welcome your new family to our community. We appreciate the thought." "I'm sure you do." Sterling's smile sharpened. "Mrs. Hayes, is it?" "That's right. A widow, I understand, with 9 children." He shook his head slowly. "Tragic, simply tragic. How did your husband die?" "Mining accident." Eleanor kept her voice flat. 10 months ago. "My condolences." The word held no warmth. "It must be difficult, raising 9 children alone." "I manage." "I'm sure you do." His eyes swept over her, calculating. "Strong women always do. It's the weak ones who don't survive out here." Something cold slithered down Eleanor's spine. The way he said survive carried weight she didn't want to examine. "Well," Sterling stepped back, adjusting his gloves. "I won't keep you. I'm sure you have much to discuss. Business matters, perhaps. Old papers, that sort of thing." Samuel's face didn't change, but Eleanor saw his hand twitch toward his belt. "Just settling the family in," Samuel said evenly. Of course, verstehe." Sterling mounted his horse, his men following suit. "Do give my regards to Abigail. And Mrs. Hayes." He tipped his hat. "Welcome to Copper Springs. I do hope you survive longer than the last one." He rode away, his men flanking him like wolves. Eleanor didn't breathe until they disappeared over the ridge. "He knows." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah." Samuel's face was pale. "He knows." "What do we do?" Samuel turned to look at her, and for the first time she saw fear in those haunted gray eyes. "We get those papers to Helena before he stops us." The next 3 days passed in a blur of tension and preparation. Eleanor learned the ranch, not just its size, but its rhythms. The hands who worked the cattle, the patterns of who went where and when. She learned Abigail, too. The older woman was sharper than she let on, her mild manner hiding a steel core. "I was there when Rebecca died," Abigail told her on the second night while the children slept. Held her hand while she screamed. Watched her bleed out while that useless doctor fumbled around drunk. You think it was murder? I think that girl was healthy as a horse until she started digging into James's past. And I think she was terrified those last few weeks, jumping at shadows looking over her shoulder. Abigail's voice hardened. She told me she'd found something. Something that would destroy powerful men. 3 days later, she was dead. Did she tell you what she found? No. Said it was safer if I didn't know. Abigail's eyes glistened. She was protecting me. Even at the end, she was protecting everyone but herself. Eleanor thought about the papers in Samuel's study, the names, the payments, the signature. Sterling. You always suspected, never had proof. Abigail gripped Eleanor's hand. But you do now, you and Samuel, which means you are both in danger. I know. Do you really? Abigail leaned closer. Cornelius Sterling has been running this territory for 30 years. He's got the sheriff in his pocket, the courts under his thumb, and men willing to kill for the price of a bottle of whiskey. You think he's going to let two strangers destroy everything he's built? He can try to stop us. He will try, and he might succeed. Abigail's voice dropped. Rebecca was strong too, strong and brave and determined to do the right thing. And she's buried behind this house. Eleanor felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. What would you have me do? Run, take my children, and disappear? I'd have you survive, whatever that takes. Surviving isn't enough. Eleanor's jaw set. I spent 10 months surviving, watching my children starve, losing everything we had, scraping by on scraps and prayers. That isn't living. That's just waiting to die slower. Abigail stared at her. Samuel asked me to help him find the truth. I said yes, not because I'm brave, not because I'm foolish, because my children are in that house. Eleanor's voice shook with fury. And as long as Sterling is out there, that as long as this secret stays buried, they're in danger. So I'm going to help Samuel expose him. I'm going to help bring that man down. And then I'm going to raise my children in peace the way they deserve. For a long moment, Abigail said nothing. Then slowly she smiled. Rebecca would have liked you. I wish I'd known her. You would have been friends. Abigail squeezed her hand. Be careful, Eleanor, please. For your children's sake, be careful. I will. But even as she said it, Eleanor knew careful might not be enough. The third morning, everything changed. Eleanor was in the kitchen, helping May knead bread, when Henry burst through the door. My rider coming fast. She wiped her hands and followed him to the porch. A single horse was thundering toward the ranch, its rider bent low over the neck. As it got closer, Eleanor recognized Charlie, one of Samuel's hands, his face white with panic. He pulled up hard, the horse lathered and heaving. Mr. Brennan, Charlie was shouting before he hit the ground. Mr. Brennan, you gotta come quick. Samuel appeared from the barn, Abigail close behind. What is it? Sheriff Morgan. He's got a warrant for your arrest. Says you murdered Rebecca. The world stopped. Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. On what grounds? Samuel's voice was deadly calm. New evidence, he says. Witness came forward. Says they saw you arguing with Mrs. Brennan the night before she died. Says you threatened her. That's a lie. Don't matter what it is. Morgan's on his way here with 6 men. They'll be here within the hour. Abigail gripped Samuel's arm. Sterling, this is Sterling. I know. He's trying to stop you before you can get those papers out. I know. Eleanor's mind was racing. If they arrest you, you'll never make it to trial. Something will happen in that jail. Samuel met her eyes. I know. Then run. Take the papers. Ride for Helena. Get them to the federal marshal. And leave you here, you and 9 children alone with Sterling's men. Samuel shook his head. I won't do it. You have to. No. Samuel said no, Eleanor. His voice cracked. I already lost Rebecca because I wasn't here to protect her. I won't make that mistake again. This isn't about protecting me. Eleanor grabbed his arm. This is about the truth, about justice, about making sure Rebecca didn't die for nothing. Ma, Henry's voice cut through. Eleanor turned. Her son stood rigid, his face pale but determined. I'll go. What? I'll take the papers. I know how to ride. I know how to stay hidden. Henry's jaw set exactly like his father's used to. I can make it to Helena. Absolutely not. Ma, you're 15 years old. That's hid. I'm old enough to do what needs doing. Henry stepped forward. Pa's dead. You got 8 other children to protect. Someone has to carry those papers, and it can't be Mr. Brennan if they're coming to arrest him. Henry Robert Hayes, let me do this. Her son's voice broke just slightly. Let me do something that matters, please. Eleanor stared at him. This boy who'd grown up too fast, who'd carried too much, who was standing there offering to risk his life for people he'd known 3 days. No, Samuel's voice was firm. I won't send a child to do my duty. Then we all go. Abigail stepped forward. All of us together. May can take the other children to the line cabin and hide them until this is over. There isn't time. Then we make time. Abigail's voice rose. I am not losing another person I love to Cornelia Sterling. Not you, not this woman, not her children. We go together or we don't go at all. Hoofbeats echoed in the distance. Everyone froze. Charlie's face went white. They're early. God help us, they're early. Eleanor's heart slammed against her ribs. She looked at her children, some in the kitchen, some on the porch, and all of them watching with wide, terrified eyes. Henry, get your brothers and sisters in iron. Now, didn't I? But now Henry. He grabbed James's arm, started shoving children toward the door. Grace scooped up Rose. The twins ran hand in hand. Charlotte, Thomas, Alice, all of them moving huddled like sheep. Mrs. Hayes, Samuel's hand closed on her arm. Whatever happens, don't let them separate us. Sterling wants me alone. As long as there are witnesses, he can't. The first riders crested the hill. 6 men, just as Charlie had said. Sheriff Morgan in front, tin star glinting on his chest. Behind him, 4 deputies, and 1 man in a fine black coat. Sterling, he'd come himself. Eleanor felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. Stay behind me, Samuel murmured, like hell. She stepped up beside him, shoulder to shoulder, and faced the men who'd come to destroy them. Morgan pulled his horse up short. Samuel Brennan, I got a warrant for your arrest on suspicion of murder. Murder of who? Your wife, Rebecca Brennan. Morgan's voice was flat rehearsed. New witness has come forward with testimony placing you at the scene. The scene was my own bedroom. Where else would I be when my wife was giving birth? Witness says you argued with her, threatened her life. What witness? Morgan hesitated. His eyes flicked to Sterling. That's confidential. Convenient. Sterling nudged his horse forward, that thin smile on his lips. Now, Mr. Brennan, there's no need for hostility. The sheriff is simply doing his job. Surely you understand the importance of law. I understand you're using it as a weapon. Such accusations. Sterling tisked. I'm merely a concerned citizen here to ensure justice is served. Justice, Samuel laughed bitterly. You don't know the meaning of the word. Perhaps not, but I know the meaning of this. Sterling produced a folded paper. A warrant, Mr. Brennan, signed by a territorial judge. Perfectly legal, perfectly binding. Signed by you. Signed by my colleague, Judge Hartwell, actually. I recuse myself given our personal history. Sterling's smile widened. Everything above board. Everything proper. Eleanor stepped forward. You're not taking him. Sterling's eyes slid to her. Cold. Predatory. Mrs. Hayes, I don't believe this concerns you. It concerns me when you're trying to frame an innocent man. Frame? Sterling tilted his head. Strong words from a woman who's been here 3 days. Tell me, what exactly do you think you know? I know enough. Do you? He leaned forward in his saddle. Let me tell you what I know, Mrs. Hayes. I know you're a widow with 9 children and no money. I know you answered an advertisement from a suspected murderer because you had no other options. And I know that whatever fantasies Mr. Brennan has spun for you, they won't protect you when this is over. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Sterling's voice hardened. This territory has laws. Those laws will be enforced. And anyone who interferes with that enforcement will face consequences. Even women and children. Something flickered in Sterling's eyes just for a moment. I'm not a monster, Mrs. Hayes. Your children are perfectly safe as long as you don't do anything foolish. Like what? Like hiding evidence, spreading lies, helping a murderer escape justice. He smiled again. Things like that tend to have unfortunate results. Eleanor felt the threat wrap around her throat like a noose. "Sheriff," Samuel's voice was steady, "if you're going to arrest me, do it. But know this, there are papers in this house. Papers that prove Cornelius Sterling has been involved in fraud, theft, and murder for 30 years. If anything happens to me, those papers go to the federal marshal in Helena." Morgan's face went pale. "What papers?" "Don't listen to him." Sterling's voice was sharp. "He's desperate, making up stories. I've got names, dates, payments, including payments to whoever killed Rebecca." Samuel stared straight at Sterling. "Including a payment made 3 weeks before she died, with your signature on it." Silence. Morgan looked at Sterling. The deputies shifted uneasily. "He's lying," Sterling said, but his voice had lost its smoothness. "There are no such papers." "Then you won't mind if the sheriff searches the house to verify?" "That's not necessary." "If there's nothing to find, what's the harm?" Sterling's face twisted. Eleanor watched him calculate, watched him weigh his options, consider his moves, search for a way out. This was a man used to controlling every situation, and for the first time he wasn't all in control. "Sheriff Morgan," Sterling's voice was ice, "execute the warrant. Arrest Mr. Brennan, now." Morgan hesitated. "Now, Sheriff." The tin star on Morgan's chest seemed to weigh him down. Eleanor could see it in his face. The conflict, the doubt, the fear. "Mr. Brennan," Morgan's voice was hoarse, "I'm going to need you to come with me. On fabricated charges, on legal charges, backed by a warrant." Morgan wouldn't meet his eyes. "I don't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice, Sheriff, everyone." Morgan flinched. "Mama." Eleanor's blood froze. She turned. Rose stood on the porch, having escaped from her siblings. 3 years old, clutching a rag doll, staring at the men with horse and guns. "Mama, what's happening?" One of the deputies moved toward the porch. Eleanor was between them before she knew she'd moved. "Touch my daughter and I'll kill you myself." The deputy stopped short. "Ma'am, I said stay back." "Mrs. Hayes," Sterling's voice was silk over steel. "Control yourself. No one is threatening your children." "Then keep your men away from them." She scooped Rose into her arms, backing toward the house. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely think. Henry appeared in the doorway, the other children behind him. "Ma, get inside, all of you, now!" But inside Henry. The children retreated. Eleanor turned back to face the men. Rose clutched tight against her chest. "You want to arrest Mr. Brennan, you do it. But those papers exist. And if anything happens to him, anything at all, they go straight to Helena." Sterling's eyes narrowed. "You're making a mistake, Mrs. Hayes." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Sterling smiled. It was the coldest smile Eleanor had ever seen. "Very well, Sheriff. Proceed with the arrest, but leave 2 men here to ensure Mrs. Hayes and her children remain safe." "Safe?" Eleanor's voice dripped contempt. "Of course. A widow alone with 9 children in this dangerous territory. We wouldn't want anything to happen to them." The threat was crystal clear. "If you harm them—" Samuel stepped forward. "Harm them?" Sterling's smile widened. "Mr. Brennan, please. I'm simply providing protection. After all, you won't be here to protect them yourself." 2 deputies dismounted, moving toward the house. Eleanor's mind raced. 2 guards meant surveillance. Surveillance meant no way to get the papers out. No way to contact Helena. No way to expose Sterling before it was too late. They were trapped. "Samuel," she caught his arm as Morgan moved forward with shackles. "Don't. It's going to be all right." His voice was calm, but she could see the fear in his eyes. "Take care of the children. Abigail will help you. I'm not letting them take you. You don't have a choice." He pressed something into her palm. Small metal warm from his body. 3rd brick from the left in the study fireplace. "Push it and the back opens. You'll find everything." "Samuel. Promise me, Eleanor. Promise me you'll get those papers to Helena. Promise me Rebecca didn't die for nothing." Tears burned her eyes. "I promise." They took him. Eleanor stood on the porch with Rose in her arms and watched them shackle Samuel Brennan like a common criminal. Watched them put him on a horse, hands bound behind his back. Watched Sterling tip his hat in mock courtesy before riding away. The two deputies remained positioning themselves near the barn with clear sight lines to the house. "Ma," Henry's voice came from behind her. "Ma, what do we do?" Eleanor looked at the key in her hand, looked at her children gathered in the doorway, looked at Abigail, whose face was pale with fury and grief. "We wait," she said, "and then we fight." The sun set over Copper Springs, painting the sky red as blood, and Eleanor Hayes began planning her war. The key burned in Eleanor's palm like a brand. She waited until full dark, until the deputies had settled into their watch by the barn, until her children were in bed pretending to sleep. Then she moved. The study door creaked. She froze, heart slamming against her ribs. Nothing. No shouts, no footsteps. She slipped inside and closed the door behind her. The fireplace was cold ashes, gray and dead. Eleanor knelt on the hearth, counting bricks from the left. 1, 2, 3. She pushed. The brick shifted. Then the whole back panel swung inward, revealing a hollow space beyond. Eleanor reached in and pulled out a leather satchel heavy with papers. She opened it, hands shaking, and saw names, dates, payments. Everything Samuel had described and more. Enough to destroy Cornelius Sterling. Enough to bring justice to Rebecca Brennan and every family his father had ruined. Enough to get them all killed if Sterling found out she had it. "Ma." Eleanor spun, shoving the satchel behind her back. Henry stood in the doorway, fully dressed, his father's knife at his belt. "What are you doing up?" "Same thing you are." Her son stepped into the room and closed the door. "Figured you'd go for those papers tonight. You should be in bed." "So should you." Henry's jaw set. "What's the plan?" "There isn't a plan yet." "Then let's make one." Eleanor stared at her son. This boy who'd been forced to grow up too fast, who carried too much weight on too young shoulders. "Henry, don't." His voice cracked. "Don't tell me to go back to bed. Don't tell me I'm too young. Pa's dead. Mr. Brennan's in jail. Those men out there aren't going to let us just walk away." He stepped closer. "I know what's at stake, Ma. Let me help." Eleanor's throat tightened. She thought about Robert, who'd worked himself to death trying to provide for them. Thought about all the times she'd tried to shield Henry from the hard truths of their lives. Thought about how that shielding had done nothing but make him feel helpless. "All right." She pulled out the satchel. "We need to get these to Helena, federal marshal's office." "How far?" 3 days' ride, maybe 4 in this weather. "And those deputies? They're watching the main road, but there's another way off this property." Eleanor paused. "Abigail mentioned an old mining trail, goes through the mountains, comes out north of town." "I can take it." "No." I said no, Henry. "I'm not sending you alone into those mountains in winter." "Then who?" "You can't go. Rose needs you. The little ones need you. Abigail's too old. May can't leave the house." Henry's voice rose. "There isn't nobody else." "Keep your voice down." "Then stop treating me like a child." His eyes blazed. "I can do this. I know how to ride, how to survive in the cold. Pa taught me. You taught me. Let me use what I learned." Eleanor wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed at her to protect him, to keep him safe, to find another way. But there was no other way. If Sterling's men caught Samuel with those papers, if they prevented the truth from reaching Helena, Rebecca's death would mean nothing, and Sterling would keep killing. "If I let you go," she said slowly, "you follow the trail exactly as Abigail describes. You don't stop for anyone. You don't trust anyone. You get to Helena, you find the federal marshal, and you give him these papers. Nothing else matters." "I understand." "And if something goes wrong, if they catch you, you hide those papers. Bury them. Burn them. Throw them in a river. Sterling can't get his hands on them. Ever." Henry nodded. Eleanor looked at her son one last time, memorized his face, his father's jaw, his grandmother's eyes. "I love you, Henry Robert Hayes, more than you'll ever know." "I know, Ma." He hugged her fierce and brief. "I love you too." Miguel appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. "The deputies are changing watch. There's maybe 10 minutes where the barnside is unguarded." She pressed a folded paper into Henry's hand. "The trail's marked here. Follow it exactly. One wrong turn and you'll be lost in those mountains forever." "Yes, ma'am." There's food in the saddlebag and an extra blanket. The gray mare's fastest. She knows mountain trails. Thank you. Abigail gripped his shoulders. Your mother's trusting you with everything that matters. Don't make her regret it. I won't. Eleanor walked with him to the back of the house, staying in shadows, moving silent as ghosts. The cold hit them like a wall, bitter, bone deep, the kind of cold that killed unprepared travelers. Henry, Eleanor caught his arm one last time. Promise me you will come back. I promise, he slipped into the darkness. Eleanor watched him go until she couldn't see him anymore. Then she went back inside and started preparing for war. The first deputy noticed something was wrong at dawn. Eleanor heard the shout from the kitchen where she'd been pretending to make breakfast. Her hands tightened on the kettle, but she kept her face neutral as heavy boots pounded toward the house. The door burst open. Where's the boy? Eleanor turned slowly. Deputy Harrison, the meaner one with small eyes and a cruel mouth, stood in the doorway, his hand on his gun. Which boy? I got 4 of them. Don't play dumb with me, the oldest one. Henry, he isn't in his bed. Horse is gone from his barn. Where'd he go? Eleanor shrugged. Boys his age do foolish things. Probably went for a ride to clear his head. In this weather, in the dark. Like I said, foolish. Harrison's face twisted. He grabbed Eleanor's arm, yanking her close. Listen here, woman. Judge Sterling gave specific orders. Nobody leaves this ranch. Your boy's out there somewhere, and I want to know where he went. Get your hands off my mother. James's voice rang out from the doorway. 9 years old, skinny as a rail, but standing like he was ready to fight. James, go back upstairs. He's hurting you. I'm fine, go. Now, James. Harrison released her arm with a shove. This isn't over. When Judge Sterling finds out. Then you better tell him, hadn't you? Eleanor rubbed her arm where bruises were already forming. Go on, run and tell your master what happened. See if I care. Harrison's face went red with fury, but he turned and stalked out. The moment he was gone, Eleanor's composure cracked. Ma! Grace appeared from the hallway, rose on her hip. Ma, what's happening? Nothing, everything's fine. Where's Henry? Doing something important. Eleanor forced herself to straighten to focus. I need you to keep the little ones calm. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. Good girl. Abigail entered the kitchen, her face grim. Harrison's riding to town, going to tell Sterling. I figured. Which means we've got maybe 2 hours before this whole place is crawling with his men. I know. What do we do? Eleanor thought about Henry somewhere in those mountains carrying everything that mattered. Thought about Samuel locked in a cell waiting for a trial that would never be fair. Thought about her 8 remaining children trapped in a house surrounded by enemies. We hold on, she said. Whatever it takes, we hold on until Henry reaches Helena. The 2 hours passed like 2 years. Eleanor kept the children inside, away from windows, away from doors. She told them stories, played games, did everything she could to keep them calm while her own heart threatened to pound out of her chest. Abigail paced the parlor like a caged animal. May stayed in the kitchen, cooking food nobody would eat. And outside, the world went quiet. Too quiet. Ma? Grace's voice was barely a whisper. Someone's coming. Eleanor moved to the window, staying to the side, peeking through the edge of the curtain. Riders, at least a dozen pouring over the ridge like a black flood. Sterling rode at their head. Abigail, Eleanor's voice didn't shake. Take the children to the cellar. Now. Eleanor. Now, hi. Ma, no. James grabbed her arm. We aren't leaving you. You're going to do exactly what I say. Eleanor knelt, gripping his shoulders. You're going to take your brothers and sisters to the cellar. You're going to stay quiet, stay hidden, and you're not going to come out until I come get you. Understand? But, James, this is important. The most important thing you've ever done. She pulled him close, pressed a kiss to his forehead. I need you to be brave. Can you do that for me? His lip trembled, but he nodded. That's my boy. She watched Abigail herd them down the cellar stairs. Grace with Rose, James pulling the twins, Charlotte silent as a shadow, Thomas clinging to Alice's hand. 8 children disappearing into darkness. Then Eleanor closed the cellar door and turned to face the front of the house alone. Sterling dismounted slowly, deliberately. Eleanor stepped onto the porch. Mrs. Hayes, we need to talk. So talk. Inside, this cold is rather unpleasant. You aren't coming in my house. Your house, Sterling laughed. Mrs. Hayes, this isn't your house. It belongs to a man currently sitting in jail awaiting trial for murder. You have no claim to anything here. I got 9 children who live here. That's claim enough. 8 children, actually. Sterling's smile sharpened. Unless you'd like to tell me where the 9th one is. Eleanor said nothing. No. Then let me make a guess. Sterling climbed the porch steps, stopping just inches from her. Young Henry, resourceful boy from what I hear, is currently riding north with certain documents that don't belong to him. Documents that could cause considerable trouble for considerable people. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Sterling's hand shot out, grabbing her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Let me be very clear, Mrs. Hayes. Your son is out there alone in mountains that have killed men twice his age. My men are already tracking him. They will find him. And when they do, he left the thread hanging. If you hurt my son, I don't want to hurt anyone. Sterling released her chin. I want those papers. Give me the originals. Call off your boy, and this all goes away. You can take your children and leave this territory. Start fresh somewhere else. No harm done. And Samuel, Mr. Brennan will face justice for his crime. What crimes? The only criminal here is you. Sterling's face hardened. You have 1 hour, Mrs. Hayes. 1 hour to produce those documents, or tell me where your son is heading. After that, he gestured to his men. I stopped being polite. Eleanor spent that hour preparing. She loaded Robert's old rifle, kept hidden in the root cellar behind a false wall. The one thing she'd refused to sell. She showed Abigail where the ammunition was stored. She wrote a letter just in case, telling her children she loved them and to find a way to Helena no matter what. And she prayed. For Henry in the mountains. For Samuel in that cell. For her children in the cellar. For herself, standing at the window watching Sterling's men fan out around the property like wolves circling prey. The hour ended. Sterling approached the house again, but this time he didn't come alone. 4 of his men flanked him, and between them walked Sheriff Morgan, face-pale hands shaking the look of a man who knew he was about to do something unforgivable. Time's up, Mrs. Hayes. Eleanor opened the door but stayed inside, Robert's rifle held low at her side. I don't have anything to give you. Then you've made your choice. Sterling nodded to his men. Search the house, find the papers and the children. Touch my children and I'll kill every man who comes through this door. The men hesitated. She's one woman with an old rifle. Sterling's voice dripped contempt. You're 4 armed men. Do your jobs. The first man stepped forward. Eleanor raised the rifle. I'm warning you. Ma'am, put the gun down. Nobody needs to get hurt. Then stay out of my house. Another step. A shot rang out, but not from Eleanor's rifle. The lead man stumbled, clutching his arm, blood seeping between his fingers. Everyone froze. Next one goes between someone's eyes. The voice came from above. Eleanor looked up. Abigail stood at a second-floor window, a hunting rifle in her hands, smoke curling from the barrel. Abigail. You should have known a lot of things, Cornelius. Abigail chambered another round. Like what happens when you threaten a woman's family. Now get off this property before I put the next bullet somewhere more permanent. You're making a mistake. Only mistake I made was keeping quiet for 30 years. That ends today. Sterling's face contorted. For a moment, Eleanor saw the mask slip, saw the ugly, vicious creature beneath the polished exterior. You think this changes anything? Sterling's voice rose. My men are already hunting that boy. They'll find him before sunset, and when they do, sir. The shout came from the ridge, one of Sterling's scouts riding hard toward the house. Sir, riders coming from the north. At least 20 of them. Sterling's head snapped around. What? Federal badges, sir. They're carrying federal badges. Eleanor's heart stopped. Federal. From the north. From Helena. But that was impossible. Henry couldn't have reached Helena yet. There wasn't time, unless... No, Sterling's voice cracked. No, that's not possible. But it was. The riders crested the ridge, and at their head rode a man in a long coat with a martial star on his chest. And beside him on a gray mare lathered with sweat, Henry. Henry! Eleanor's voice broke. Henry! Her son was alive. He'd made it. Mrs. Hayes, the lead marshal, dismounted, his face grim. I'm Marshal Tucker. Your boy found us on the trail. Seems we were already heading this way. Already heading? Got a telegram 3 days ago. Anonymous tip about corruption in the territorial courts. Suspicious death of a Mrs. Rebecca Brennan. We've been investigating Judge Sterling for weeks. Eleanor's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the porch steps, rifle clattering beside her, while the world spun and blurred around her. Henry was at her side in seconds. Ma, are you okay? You're alive. I'm alive. You made it. I made it. He was crying, tears streaming down his face, but he was smiling too. I found them on the trail, Ma. They were already coming. Who sent the telegram? Someone inside Sterling's operation wanted out. Tucker pulled a folded paper from his coat. But we've got more than an anonymous tip now, evidence that connects you to fraud, theft, extortion, and murder Judge Sterling, including the murder of Rebecca Brennan. That's preposterous. Sterling's voice had recovered some of its smoothness, but Eleanor could hear the desperation beneath. Everyone knows Samuel Brennan killed his wife. Everyone knows what you told them to believe. Tucker's voice hardened. But we've got the real story now. Payment records, witness statements, everything. You're done. Sterling's mask shattered. In that moment, Eleanor saw him for what he truly was. Not a powerful judge, not a clever manipulator, just a small, vicious man whose empire of lies was crumbling around him. You can't do this! His voice rose to a shriek. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I've built? I know exactly what you've built. Tucker nodded to his men. Take him. The deputies moved forward. Sterling's hand went to his gun. Don't. Eleanor was on her feet, Robert's rifle back in her hands, pointed at Sterling's chest. Don't you dare. You've caused enough death. It ends here. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Sterling's shoulders slumped. His hand dropped to his side. They took him in chains. Eleanor watched them load him onto a horse. Watched them bind his wrists. Watched the most powerful man in the territory reduced to a common prisoner. It was over. Ma, Henry's voice was hoarse. Ma, can we go get Rose and the others now? They're probably scared. Eleanor laughed, a broken, hysterical sound that turned into sobbing halfway through. Yeah, baby. Yeah, let's go get them. She walked into the house on legs that felt like water, Henry's arm around her waist, and opened the cellar door. 8 faces looked up at her from the darkness. 8 children, scared and huddled together, waiting for their mother. It's over, Eleanor said. It's all over. You can come out now. Rose reached her first small arms, wrapping around her neck so tight Eleanor could barely breathe. Mama, I was scared. I know, baby, I know. But you were so brave. You were all so brave. James pushed through, followed by the twins, then Thomas and Alice. Charlotte came last, silent as always, but she pressed herself against Eleanor's side and didn't let go. Grace stood back, holding space for the little ones, but her eyes were streaming tears. Henry found the marshals, Eleanor said. Henry found the marshals and Mr. Brennan. Her heart clenched. In all the chaos, she'd almost forgotten. Marshal Tucker. She turned, Rose still in her arms. Mr. Brennan, he's in the town jail. They arrested him on false charges. Already sent men to release him. Tucker's face softened. Should be here within the hour. Eleanor's legs finally gave out for real. She sat down right there in the hallway, surrounded by her children, and cried. Samuel arrived as the sun was setting. Eleanor heard the horse before she saw it. Heard Henry shout, Ucky, he's here. Heard the thunder of hooves in the frozen yard. She ran outside without her coat, without thinking. Samuel was dismounting, his face bruised, his wrists raw from shackles. But alive and free. Eleanor. Samuel. She crashed into him so hard they both nearly fell. His arms came around her, tight and desperate and trembling. I thought, his voice cracked, when they told me what happened, when they said Sterling was coming here with his men. I'm fine. We're all fine. The children, all safe, every single one. He pulled back just enough to look at her face, to search her eyes. You did it. You got the papers to Helena. Henry did it. He rode through the night in a blizzard to find those marshals. Eleanor laughed through her tears. Our boy did it. Our boy. The word hung between them. Eleanor felt her face flush. I didn't mean... Don't. Samuel's hand came up to cup her cheek. Don't take it back. Please. Samuel, I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other. I know this whole thing started as a lie. His voice was raw, stripped bare. But Eleanor, when I was in that cell thinking I might never see you again, all I could think about was how much I wanted the chance to make it real. Make what real? This, us, a family. His eyes searched hers. I'm not asking for an answer now. I'm just asking for the chance. Eleanor thought about Robert, who'd been her whole world for 20 years. Thought about the life they'd built together, the children they'd raised, the dreams they'd shared. Then she thought about this man, this broken, haunted, honorable man, who'd risked everything to right his father's wrongs, who'd looked at her 9 children and seen a family not a burden, who was standing here now, bruised and bleeding, asking for nothing more than a chance. You'll have to earn it, she said. I know. Every day, for the rest of your life. I know. I don't need a hero, Samuel. I need a partner. Someone who's going to stand beside me, not in front of me. I can do that. And my children come first. Always, no matter what. They should. They're extraordinary. Samuel smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, it reached his eyes. Just like their mother. Eleanor leaned up and kissed him. It was soft, tentative, 2 wounded souls reaching for each other across a gulf of grief and fear. But it was real. It was honest. It was a beginning. Ma. They broke apart to find Rose barreling toward them across the yard, her small legs churning through the snow. Samuel caught her, swinging her up into his arms. Hey there, little one. Ma said the bad men are gone. She's right. They're gone forever. Forever, Tito. Forever. Samuel looked at Eleanor over Rose's head, his eyes bright. No more bad men. Just us. Just family. The other children were emerging from the house, now drawn by the commotion. Henry led the way, Grace behind him, with Alice on her hip. The twins came next, then James, then Thomas. Charlotte brought up the rear, silent but watching. 9 children forming a semicircle around Samuel and Eleanor. Kids, Eleanor's voice was steady, strong. I think it's time we had a family meeting. About what? James asked. About what happens next. She looked at each of them in turn. Henry with his father's jaw. Grace with her quiet wisdom. James with his fierce loyalty. The twins with their unbreakable bond. Charlotte with her silent grief. Thomas with his tender heart. Alice with her stubborn determination. Rose with her sunshine soul. Her children. Her life. Her reason for everything. Mr. Brennan has asked us to stay, Eleanor said carefully, to make this place our home. Our real home. What do you want, Ma? Henry asked. Eleanor smiled. I want to stop running. I want to build something instead of just surviving. I want you all to have the life your father wanted for you. She reached for Samuel's hand, and I think we might be able to do that here. Silence. Then James stepped forward. Does this mean I get to keep working with the horse? Laughter burst from Eleanor's throat, surprised, relieved, alive. Yeah, baby. It means you get to keep working with the horses. Then I'm in. One by one, the others nodded. Grace, the twins, Thomas, even Charlotte, silent. Charlotte dipped her chin in agreement. Henry was last. He looked at Samuel for a long moment, man to man. You heard her, he said quietly. You make Ma cry, you deal with me. All of us. Fair enough, Samuel nodded. Welcome to the family, son. Henry's face broke into a real smile. Welcome home, sir. And standing there in the frozen yard surrounded by children and snow and the promise of something new, Eleanor Hayes finally allowed herself to believe they were home. The peace lasted 3 days. 3 days of healing, of breathing, of watching her children laugh without fear. 3 days of Eleanor allowing herself to believe the nightmare was truly over. Then Marshal Tucker rode back to the ranch with news that shattered everything. Sterling escaped. Eleanor's blood turned to ice. What? Last night, someone helped him break out of the federal holding facility in Helena, killed 2 guards on the way out. How is that possible? He was under constant watch. Money talks, Mrs. Hayes, even in federal custody. Tucker's face was grim. We've got men tracking him, but in this weather with a head start. He's coming here. Samuel's voice was flat. We don't know that. I know it. Samuel stepped forward, jaw tight. Sterling doesn't run. He retaliates. Everything he built, everything he was, we destroyed it. He won't leave until he makes us pay. Eleanor thought about her children inside finally feeling safe. Thought about Rose's laughter, James's smile, the way Charlotte had started speaking again. How long do we have? If he's riding hard, maybe a day, maybe less. Tucker looked between them. I've got 4 men I can spare. It's not enough to guarantee protection, but it's not enough. Samuel shook his head. Sterling knows this territory better than anyone. He's got friends, hiding places, people who owe him. 4 men won't stop him. Then what do you suggest? Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Eleanor and she saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Resolution. We don't wait for him to come to us. We go after him first. Samuel, he's wounded on the run, desperate. That makes him dangerous, but it also makes him sloppy. Samuel's voice hardened. I know where he'll go. There's a cabin in the high country, belonged to his family before they came to Copper Springs. It's where he'd run when things got bad. You want to ride into the mountains after a cornered murderer. I want to end this once and for all. And if you get killed, Eleanor. No. She stepped forward, grabbing his arm. You listen to me, Samuel Brennan. I didn't survive everything we've been through to watch you ride off on some fool crusade and never come back. We do this together or we don't do it at all. Samuel stared at her. You can't come. The children. Abigail can watch the children. She's done it before. Eleanor's jaw set. I shot a man who tried to take my daughter. I held off Sterling's deputies with a rifle. Don't you dare tell me I can't handle this. For a moment, Samuel just looked at her. Then slowly he nodded. Together, then. Together. They left within the hour, Eleanor, Samuel, Marshall, Tucker, and 2 of his deputies. 5 riders heading into the mountains after a killer. The trail was treacherous. Ice-slicked rocks, narrow passes, drops that made Eleanor's stomach lurch. But Samuel knew the way, and he pushed them hard. He'll be traveling alone, Samuel said as they climbed. Sterling never trusted anyone enough to take them to that cabin. It's his bolt hole, his secret. Then how do you know about it? Rebecca told me. She found references to it in his papers back when she was investigating. She wanted to go there, see what he was hiding. I told her it was too dangerous. Samuel's jaw tightened. She went anyway. The week she died, she told me she had a plan. Said she'd found something that would finish Sterling for good. Eleanor processed this. You think whatever she found is still there, at the cabin? I think it's possible. Sterling never went back after Rebecca died. Probably too scared of what she might have left behind. Samuel met her eyes. If there's more evidence, more proof of what he's done, it could be there. Or it could be a trap. Also possible. The cabin came into view as the sun began its descent. It was smaller than Eleanor expected, weathered and gray, hunched against the cliff like a wounded animal. A thin trail of smoke rose from the chimney. He's here, Tucker whispered. They positioned themselves carefully. Tucker to the east, his deputies to the west and north. Eleanor took cover behind a rocky outcrop, rifle steady, heart pounding. Samuel rode toward the cabin alone. Sterling, Cornelius Sterling, I know you're in there. Come out and face me. Silence. You wanted revenge. Here I am. No marshals, no deputies. Just me. The cabin door creaked open. Sterling emerged and Eleanor barely recognized him. 3 days on the run had stripped away his polish, his elegance. His silver hair was wild, his clothes torn, his face gaunt with desperation. But the gun in his hand was steady. Samuel, you came. I came. Do you know what you've cost me, what you've destroyed? I know exactly what I destroyed. An empire built on blood and lies. Families ruined, lives taken, justice twisted into a weapon. Samuel's voice hardened. You deserved worse. I deserved, Sterling laughed, a broken, ugly sound. I built this territory, I brought law. Where there was chaos, I made something out of nothing. You murdered innocent people. I made necessary sacrifices for the greater good, for progress. Sterling's gun rose, and now you've undone it all. Everything I worked for, everything I built, Gone because of you and that meddling wife of yours. Rebecca was right to expose you. Rebecca was a fool. Sterling's voice cracked. She could have looked the other way, could have enjoyed the wealth and privilege I'd helped create. Instead, she chose to dig up bones that should have stayed buried. So you killed her. I did what had to be done. The words exploded out of Sterling, raw and ragged. She was going to destroy everything. She found the proof, all of it, hidden right here in this cabin. Letters, ledgers, everything my father and yours used to build our empires. She was going to take it to Washington, to the federal government. Eleanor's breath caught. The evidence, it was here. It was still here. The doctor, Samuel said slowly. Webb. He was supposed to make it look natural, supposed to be competent. Sterling spat. Drunk fool botched it. Had to pay him a fortune to disappear. And the baby Sterling flinched just slightly, but Eleanor saw it. That wasn't... I didn't want... He stopped, composed himself. Collateral damage. Unfortunate, but unavoidable. You murdered a child. I eliminated a threat. Sterling's composure shattered completely. Do you understand what she would have done? What she would have destroyed? 30 years of work, 30 years of building something. Something rotten, something evil, something necessary. Sterling raised his gun, aimed at Samuel's chest. And you're just like her. Can't leave well enough alone. Can't understand that some secrets are better left buried. You're done, Sterling. Even if you kill me, the marshals have enough. The marshals have paper copies, secondary sources. Sterling's twisted smile appeared. But the original, the real proof, still here, still hidden. And when I'm gone, it'll stay hidden forever. Then tell me where it is. Why would I do that? Because you're going to die here, Cornelius. You know it. I know it. There's nowhere left to run, nowhere left to hide. This is the end. Then why should I make it easy for you? Because Rebecca deserves justice. The families you destroyed deserve justice. The truth deserves to be known. Samuel stepped forward. You can die as a monster remembered for nothing but your crimes, or you can deal with one shred of decency left, one more act of redemption. Sterling's gun trembled. For a moment, Eleanor thought he might actually do it, might reveal the evidence, might choose conscience over ego. Then his face hardened. Redemption is for fools. He fired. Samuel was already moving, diving left as the bullet whistled past his ear. He hit the ground and rolled, came up with his own gun drawn. Tucker's shot cracked through the air, catching Sterling's shoulder. The judge stumbled, fell. Eleanor was running before she knew she'd moved. Samuel. I'm all right. He was on his feet, crossing to where Sterling lay groaning in the snow. Blood spread from his shoulder, staining the white snow red. His face was twisted with pain and hatred. Finish it, Sterling hissed. Finish it, you coward. Samuel holstered his gun. No, you're going to stand trial. You're going to face justice, and everyone's going to know exactly what kind of man you are. Trial. Sterling laughed, blood on his lips. You think a trial will change anything. You think the truth will set you free. Think it's a start. Tucker reached them. Secured him. Get that wound treated. I want him alive for the hangman. As they hauled Sterling to his feet, the judge's eyes found Eleanor. Youth, he breathed. You're the reason. You and your brats. If you'd never come here. If I'd never come here, you'd still be ruining lives and murdering innocents. Eleanor's voice was steady. I'm glad I came. I'm glad I got to help bring you down. Sterling's face contorted with rage. You'll regret it. Someday, somehow, you'll regret. That's enough. Samuel stepped between them. Get him out of here. They dragged Sterling away, his threats fading into the wind. Eleanor sagged against Samuel, suddenly exhausted. It's over. Really over. Almost. Samuel looked at the cabin. He said the evidence is still here. The originals. Everything Rebecca found. He could have been lying. He wasn't. Samuel's jaw set. I saw his face when he talked about it. He was proud. Proud that he'd hidden it all these years. Proud that even now he might beat us. Then we search. It took them 2 hours. The cabin was small, but Sterling had been clever. False walls, hidden compartments, floorboards that lifted it to reveal hollow spaces beneath. Eleanor found it behind the fireplace, a metal box rusted with age locked tight. Samuel. He came to her side, took the box, turned it over in his hands. This is it. This is what Rebecca was looking for. He broke the lock with the butt of his gun. Inside were papers. Dozens of them, yellowed but perfectly preserved. Letters, ledgers, maps, contracts. A complete record of 30 years of corruption, fraud, and murder. And at the bottom, a single envelope addressed in neat, feminine handwriting. To Samuel, my love. Samuel's hand shook as he opened it. Eleanor watched the emotions flicker across his face. Grief, love, anger, and finally peace. What does it say? Samuel looked up, tears streaming down his cheeks. She knew she was in danger. Wrote this the night before she died, hid it here along with the evidence. His voice broke. She says she's sorry, that she never wanted to put me in danger, that she loves me, and she hopes someday I'll find this and know the truth. He clutched the letter to his chest. She asked me to finish what she started. Make sure the families get justice, not let her death be meaningless. She believed in me, Eleanor. Even at the end, she believed I could fix this. And you did. We did. Eleanor pulled him close. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Without your strength, your courage, your stubborn refusal to give up. I had good motivation. Samuel's voice was soft. 9 of them, actually. Eleanor laughed, a real laugh full of relief and joy. Let's go home, Samuel said. Let's go back to our family. Montana Ranch, summer 1942. Old Henry paused in his telling. The afternoon had grown late shadows stretching long across the porch. His grandson Johnny sat motionless, caught completely in the story. What happened then, Grandpa? Henry smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. Then we lived. Sterling went to trial. They hanged him 6 weeks later. Samuel returned the land to the 12 families his father had destroyed. Every acre. And Ma, the old man's voice softened. Ma married Samuel that spring. April wedding. I walked her down the aisle. But you said at the beginning you learned what it cost to protect family. What was the cost? Henry looked at his grandson for a long moment. The cost was growing up faster than I should have. Carrying weight a 15-year-old shouldn't carry. Riding through a blizzard knowing I might dead, but doing it anyway because it was right. He leaned forward. But you know what I learned, Johnny? The cost of not protecting them would have been higher. If I'd stayed safe, if I'd let fear stop me, Sterling would have killed Samuel. Probably Ma too, and my brothers and sisters would have been alone. So sometimes you have to fight. Sometimes you have to fight, but not because someone insulted you or made you angry. You fight when the people you love are in danger. When standing up is the only way to keep them safe. That's what you did for your sister. That's why I stopped your father from punishing you. Johnny sat back processing. Did you stay on the ranch? All my life. Ma and Samuel had 2 more children. Raised all 11 of us there. When Samuel died, I inherited it. Raised your father here. And now you. Henry reached over, gripped his grandson's shoulder. This land was bought with blood and suffering, but it was redeemed with courage and truth. Don't ever forget that. I won't, Grandpa. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the Montana mountains. The same mountains Henry had ridden through that winter night 75 years ago, carrying papers that would bring down a corrupt judge and save the family he loved. Grandpa, yeah, son, Bushy. Thank you for telling me the story. Thank you for listening. Henry pushed himself up from the chair, joints creaking with age. Now come on. Your grandmother's waiting supper, and you know how she gets when we're late. Johnny stood but paused at the door. Is Grandma Eleanor still as fierce as she was back then? Henry laughed, a sound full of warmth and memory. Son, she's fiercer. Always has been. Always will be. That's why I loved her from the moment she stood on that porch with a rifle and dared Sterling's men to try her. They walked inside together, 3 generations bound by blood and story, and the ranch that had seen it all. Through the window, Eleanor Hayes Brennan could be seen in the kitchen, white-haired now, but still straight-backed, still strong, directing the dinner preparations with the same fierce determination that had carried 9 children across a frozen territory 75 years before. She looked up as they entered, her eyes finding Henry's, and smiled. The smile said everything. We survived. We built something good. We won. And in that moment, Henry understood that some stories never really end. They just become part of the land, part of the family, part of the legacy passed from grandfather to grandson on a summer evening when the light slants gold across the porch and the mountains stand eternal in the distance. The story of Eleanor Hayes and the Winter from Hell had become the story of the Brennan Ranch. And it would be told as long as there were children to listen and elders to remember. This was home. This was family. This was the truth they'd fought for and the peace they'd earned. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.